Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachos, page 73. 73 is Gematria Joseph. It's also Gematria Egypt. It's also Gematria number. And those three are connected. Because Joseph, he worked a lot with numbers and Gematrias, and he was able to also develop the economy in Egypt at the time. So they're all equal to 73. Which makes a lot of sense. In English Gematria, that is. Okay, Menachot 73, top of the page. Talmud lo mal. L'chol hamincha asher tiyafeh betanu, l'chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh ish ka'achiv. The verse states, in every meal offering, that is baked in the oven, shall all the sons of Aaron have, each man like the other. Leviticus 7, 9 through 10. It's this week's Parsha, Ganse. Mamish. Lining up. This verse emphasizes that the sons of Aaron must divide the meal offering equally among themselves, without exchanging it for a portion of any other offering. Alright. That's what we learned at the end, that you can't change a mincha for a piece of meat. You have to keep whatever you're given, you have to keep it. לא יחלקו מנחוס כנגד זבוחים שלא קמו בתחתיהם בדלוס, אבל יחלקו מנחוס כנגד אויפס אשר קמו בתחתיהם בדלוס. תלמוד לא אמר כל נעשה ממחשש לכל בני אהרון תהיה. The writer continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of meal offerings in exchange for portions of animal offerings, since they do not substitute for them in the case of poverty. One who is too poor to afford to bring an animal offering, for example, in the case of a sin offering determined on a sliding scale, does not bring a meal offering in its stead. Since meal offerings are not brought in place of animal offerings, there is clearly no connection between them. But perhaps they may receive a share of meal offerings in exchange for portions of bird offerings, since they do substitute for them in a case of poverty. If one is so destitute that he cannot afford to bring a bird offering, he brings a meal offering. Therefore, the same verse states, and all that is prepared in the deep pan shall all the sons of Aaron have, again emphasizing that all must have an equal share in that meal offering. Yachol lo yachloiku minachos keneged ofos shelalu mine dami velalu mine chamachim yachaloku oifos keneged zvachim halalu velalu mine domim talmud lomar ve'al machavas lechol bnei Aaron tihiyeh. The writer continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of meal offerings in exchange for portions of bird offerings, since these, meaning bird offerings, are types of offerings that involve blood sprinkled on the altar. And those, meaning meal offerings, are types of offerings made of flour, but perhaps they may receive a share of portions of bird offerings in exchange for portions of animal offerings, since both categories are types of offerings that involve blood sprinkled on the altar. Therefore, the same verse states, and on a pan shall all the sons of Aaron have, a seemingly superfluous phrase, which teaches that one may not receive a share even of bird offerings in exchange for portions of animal offerings. שלא עשיוסם ביאה ולא עשיוסם לכלי, אבל יחלו יקו מנחוס כנגד מנחוס, שאלו ואלו. עשיוסם ביאה תמד לא ימל, וכל מנחה מלולה בשמן, לכל בני אהרון תהיה. The writer continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of bird offerings in exchange for portions of animal offerings, because, with regard to these, meaning the birds, their processing, meaning killing, is executed by hand by pinching the nape of the neck. And with regard to those, meaning the animals, their processing, meaning killing, is executed with a utensil by slaughtering with a knife. But perhaps they may receive a share of meal offerings in exchange for portions of other meal offerings, since the processing of both these and those are carried out by hand. Therefore, the next verse states, and every meal offering mixed with oil shall all the sons of Aaron have. Leviticus 7:10. יכול לא יחלוקו מחבס כנגד מרחשס כנגד מחבס, שזו מעשה קושין וזו מעשה רקין, אבל יחלוקו מחבס כנגד מחבס ומרחשס כנגד מרחשס, תמר נאמר. ואחרי ולכל בני אהרון תהיה, the Braita continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of meal offering prepared on a pan in exchange for portions of a meal offering prepared in a deep pan, or portions of a meal offering prepared in a deep pan in exchange for portions of a meal offering prepared in a pan, since the actions with this pan result in a hard product, and the actions with that deep pan result in a soft product. But perhaps they may receive a share of a meal offering prepared on a pan in exchange for the portions of a different meal offering prepared on a pan, or a share of a meal offering prepared in a deep pan in exchange for portions of a different meal offering prepared in a deep pan. Therefore, the same verse states, or dry shall all the sons of Aaron have. Leviticus 7:10. יכול לא יחלוק בקודש קדושים, אבל יחלוק בקודש קהלים. תלמוד לא ימל איש כאחיו. וימל תוידו כשם שאין חולקין בקודש קדושים, כך אין חולקים בקודשים קהלים. The Braita continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of offerings of the most sacred order, for example, meal offerings in exchange for a portion of another similar offering. But they may receive a share of offerings of lesser sanctity in exchange for a portion of another similar offering. Therefore, the same verse states with regard to meal offerings, shall all the sons of Aaron have, as well as another, Leviticus 7:10. And near it appears the verse, if he offers it for a thanks offering, Leviticus 7:12, from which is derived just as one may not receive a share of one offering in exchange for a portion of another similar offering. In the case of offerings of the most sacred order, so too one may not receive a share of the one offering in exchange for a portion of another similar offering. In the case of offerings of lesser sanctity, for example, in a thanks offering, ish cholek afilu bal mum ve'en katan cholek ve'afilu tam. The Braita further expounds this verse. It states, one as well as another, ish ke'achiv. Which states that with regard to priests, a man, ish, who is an adult, receives a share even if he is blemished, but a priest who is a minor may not receive a share even if he is unblemished. This Braita evidently interprets the verse, and every meal offering mixed with oil or dry shall all the sons of Aaron have one as well as another, Leviticus 7:10, as referring to the prohibition against priests exchanging shares of offerings. If so, how does Chizkiah state that this verse is referring to the priests eating of the remainder of the Omer offering and the meal offering of a sota? Ahu mikol nafka ya petke apekte nechid Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda elahu mivechol. The Gemara answers, with regard to the prohibition against exchanging priestly shares, that is derived from the term every meal offering. By contrast, Chizkiah derives his principle with regard to these two meal offerings from the rest of the verse. The Gemara asks, but haven't you already derived from the word every that which Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, states that when one vows to offer a meal offering baked in an oven, all the baked items must be of a uniform type, either loaves or wafers. See 63b. The Gemara answers rather that halacha concerning the exchange of shares of offerings is derived from the addition of the word and in the term and every meal offering. Ravina Amal Asya Midi Tani Levi Itani Levi Nechol Chol Nechol 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 Hashamom. Ravina said, according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, the source for the halacha, that the Omer offering and the meal offering of a sota are eaten, comes from the Braita that Levi teaches. As Levi teaches, the verse states, with regard to the priestly gifts, this shall be yours of the most sacred order, reserved from the fire. Every offering of theirs, and every meal offering of theirs, and every sin offering of theirs, and every guilt offering of theirs, which they may restore to me, shall be most holy for you and for your sons. Numbers 18, verse 9. The word every in each clause includes a number of additional offerings that are eaten by the priests. The Torah states every offering of theirs is to include the log of oil that accompanies the guilt offering of a recovered leper, teaching that it is also eaten by the priests. As it might enter your mind to say that since the merciful one writes in this verse, from the fire, this would exclude this oil, which is not brought onto the altar. Therefore, the verse teaches us every offering to include the leper's oil. The Braita continues expounding the verse, and every meal offering of theirs, serving to include the Omer meal offering and the meal offering of jealousy brought by a sota, teaching that they are also eaten by the priests, as it might enter your mind to say, since the merciful one states, and they shall eat those wherewith atonement was made. Exodus 29:33. The verse thereby indicates that the priests may eat only those offerings that help the owner achieve atonement. And this Omer comes to permit eating from the new grain, see Leviticus 23:9-14, not to achieve atonement, and concerning the other offering, meaning the meal offering of a sota as well, it comes to clarify whether or not the accused woman is guilty of adultery, but not to achieve atonement. Therefore, the verse teaches us every meal offering to teach that these two meal offerings are included. The Braita continues to expound the verse. The verse states, and every sin offering of theirs, to include a bird sin offering, teaching that it is also eaten by the priest, as it might enter your mind to say the priest may not eat it because it is an unslaughtered animal carcass, as it is killed by pinching the nape of the neck, see Leviticus 5, verse 8, not by conventional slaughter. Therefore, the verse teaches us every sin offering, teaching that bird sin offerings are included. The Braita continues to expound the verse. The Torah states, and every guilt offering of theirs, to include the guilt offering of a Nazirite who has become ritually impure, see Numbers 6:12, and the guilt offering of the leper teaches that they are also eaten by the priest. The Gemara objects, with regard to the guilt offering of the leper, it is explicitly written with regard to it, for as the sin offering is the priest, so is the guilt offering. Leviticus 14:13, which already teaches that it is eaten by the priests. El Rabois, Asham Nozil, Kasham Tsoiro. So, the Gemara answers, rather, the verse serves to include the guilt offering of the Nazirite, stating that its status is like the guilt offering of the leper. As it might enter your mind to say, the guilt offering of the Nazirite is not sacrificed for atonement, but rather it comes to prepare the Nazirite to begin his period of Nazirite and Naziriteship anew, and therefore its meat would not be eaten by the priests. Therefore, the verse teaches us every guilt offering, teaching that the guilt offering of the Nazirite is included. Asher yeshivenu zegezel legel lechoi ulevanecho Shilchol Yilunecha Afilu Kalish Bo Esel. Okay, stop there, and it's Amar of Huna, the last 3 words, so we'll just start. That's a new idea. The writer continues, this shall be yours of the most sacred items, which they may restore. This is referring to an item stolen from a convert who has no heirs and subsequently dies. In this case, the stolen item is given to the priests together with an additional 1/5 of his worth. The phrase "for you and for your sons" means that it is yours and your sons' personal property, and it may be used even to betroth the woman with it, and it does not belong to the temple treasury. Okay, we'll stop it here and pick it up with the next Amud in the next video. Bezras Hashem.